Hey, everybody, welcome to module number 7. This one's titled Joining the Conversation Through Argument. And this is a great title that really sums up where we're at. We started talking about like, here's what you believe, here's what you read, and here's what you believe on that, right? Like what you think of that article, your reaction. And then we talked about how to take someone else's thoughts and react to them and compare it to someone else's thoughts and react to them, right? And show how there's relevance or importance between those two works. Now we want to get into how can you talk smartly, logically, practically, intelligently about the topic. In other words, you're not just saying, "Oh, I think blank." You're starting to answer the question. You're starting to respond to the question. You're starting to react to the question, and you're able to then promote a position or promote that argument. Defend yourself, in other words. Because that's what we're going to look at today through this idea of argument. So we have here our module learning materials and our assignments and stuff and our objectives. And then let's take a look at one of our first big pieces you're going to do, or the big piece for this unit, this module, is the argumentative paper. So the argumentative paper is all about taking a stand on an issue and defending that stand. And to defend that stand, you're going to have to use sources and research materials to show how you got to that point, right? Like that's the goal. That's the end result. Here's what I believe, and here's why I believe it, and here's other sources that really justify my position. So to do this, you're going to take one of our closed research theme readings, and you are going to develop a question out of it. Now, as long as it falls within that broad category of food and society, right? So it could be looking at free and reduced lunches. It could be looking at food deserts. It could be looking at diets or the impact of food on our environment. There's a lot of different ways to go. That's why we've been doing those reading check-ins, right? So you had a sampling of what all's out there. You're going to take one of those and you're going to develop a question on that. And that's going to be your research question, and you're going to dive into that. Now, you probably started that already last week. You started that process already last week with your mini annotated bibliography. You're going to continue that this week, and you're going to develop that into that argumentative paper. By the way, argumentative and persuasive paper, for what we are accomplishing, what we're doing, or how we're looking at, we're really going to use those words kind of interchangeably. I know that when you get out of English class, a lot of your other teachers and your other classes are going to use them interchangeably. So I kind of want to get you used to that. Argument has a slightly different connotation. Argument tends to be like, here's my position on an issue and your defense of it. Persuasion tends to be a little bit more of, I'm trying to get you to do something. I'm persuading you. There's a lot of overlap between those. And for the purposes of what we're doing, we will use those words kind of interchangeably. When you get into that research writing or that research argumentative essay, and by the way, you will see it called researched argument essay. You will see it called the research paper or an argumentative. So within this module 7 and 8, you'll see some different terminology, but they all refer to the same thing. So you're obviously going to have a thesis statement. Now, this is going to be a very clear, definitive statement of what you believe, right? Now, we're not going to use like I think we should have, right? Because you wrote the paper, we know it's yours, so we know it's your position, right? So keep it that third person. Also, too, I think it's really important to keep yourself out of this paper, because if you start interjecting yourself into the paper, like I believe and I feel and this happened to me and whatever, your audience is going to start to question your connection, right? Or your what's your motivation? What's your, why are you doing this? So if we can separate ourselves, that takes that option away. But the thesis statement is going to very clearly state your position on this topic. Schools must provide free lunch for all students, right? Or the government must have better packaging requirements on foods, or there needs to be more regulation of GMOs or something, right? Like you can pick that topic, but the thesis statement very clearly defines that problem and really gets to that position. It should never be a question of where you stand on the issue. That introductory paragraph is really going to set the tone for that paper, right? Like, here's what, here's what it, here's a attention getter. I'm going to draw my reader in. I'm going to deliver like some good background, some context, some visualization of that topic. And then I'm going to end with that thesis statement, right? And really drive that point home of where I stand on this issue. And then you're going to get into those arguments. And that's where you're really going to say, here's a reason, and here's a reason, and here's a reason. And you're going to justify those. You're going to back those up. You're going to defend them with the use of research, right? With the use of information that you've brought in from other people. Arrangement now really gets into like, how do you feel like it best walks your reader through the argument, right? Like a lot of times I have to explain the problem, right? Like a lot of times that's going to be the first step is here's the problem. Here's what it is, why it's a problem, and what it means to us, and where it comes from, and how it's related to other issues. And then I start to deliver that. Here's what we need to do. Why? And you can also think about, when you get to that statement of these are the reasons why we need to act and what we can do to act, think about like the arrangement of that. Do you start off with your heaviest, hardest point first? Like, I know my audience will most likely believe this, so I'm going to start off with this. Or do you work them up, right? Do you say, hey, here's a thing, and work your way up, right? You think about like cooking shows, right? They always show you like, hey, do you want to bake this cake? Isn't that awesome looking? Let's do it. And they start from the very beginning, right? So think about how you want to work your way through the argument to get your reader to the point that you're at. And then obviously, you are going to be, citing and using proper formatting, right? And that's just a given. That's just a given that you're going to be doing. Now, here's a couple things that I do need to touch on you, okay? This is a half draft. Again, the expectation is that you're going to be doing roughly half of the paper. And for this, it's going to be somewhere around 600, 700 words. Your final paper will be somewhere around 1,200 words, 12 to 1,500 words. You're only expected to turn in half, okay? And that's the expectation. But I really, really, really suggest that you do more, if not all, of this paper. Now, like I said before, you're going to get more feedback, right? Like that's an obvious, and that's something that that you've already seen in action. The more you can produce, the more feedback you're going to get from me and from your peers when we do some peer editing stuff. Okay, that's an important piece. But I also want to kind of prep you on Module 8, because in Module 8, your final draft will be due on Friday, not Sunday. Right? Like the papers move up, everything moves forward on the last week, on the last module. So the more you can get done now, the easier your job will be on Module 8, because there's still some other things that you're going to be doing, reflective essay and some tutorials and stuff. So you really want to set yourself up for success on that last week, because when the class ends at the end of Module 8, which is that Sunday night, that's it. That's the end. Not stretching till Monday or Wednesday or whatever, right? So the more of this paper you can produce now, the better you're setting yourself up for module number 8, practically speaking, as well as getting that feedback. We can look at some other information that we provide you here. One of them is this research argument essay, Be the Attorney. And this is all about how to take that stand on the issue, right? You think about how you say what you believe, but you have to back it up. It's not enough to say, here's the thing. You have to be able to back it up. You have to be able to really promote that position. And this is where it talks about being an advocate, in which you are fighting for other people. You are really promoting this topic for the benefit of more than just yourself, right? That's really important, because if the audience feels, if the reader feels that you're just being selfish and you're only doing this for yourself, it really kind of falls flat, and they question your motivations and why you're trying to do that. It gives you some information here, some ideas about how to write that thesis statement to get started. Focused, obviously, you got to narrow it right on the specific point. But think about that in the larger context. Like, you want to argue free and reduced lunch. Okay, well, what about free and reduced lunch that every kid needs to have? Okay, great. Breakfast, lunch, right? Like, is there a mechanism we need to do? Do we need to focus on the funding of? Do we need to focus on the delivery of? What is it we're going to really focus on? It does have to be something debatable, right? Like there's going to be people that, for any position to be a valid point, there's got to be an opposite valid point, right? Like I believe that we should have more markings on GMOs, and other people like, hey, we've done really good without markings so far, so I think we don't need any more. It has to be debatable. It has to be something that people can go back and forth on, and it's supportable. That there's definitely research out there, that there's information out there about it. There's some examples of how to write your thesis statement. And then this idea of responding. Okay. So when you get this topic and you start with that research question, the idea isn't to answer it. Do we need more packaging requirements on GMO foods? Yes, no, whatever, right? Like that's not the answer. You're responding to it. And what that means is that you're focusing it, you're narrowing it down, you're really putting your twist on it, and you're defending it. You're like, hey, and then also this, right? Like you build on that argument, you build on it. We don't just limit to a yes, no, a this or that kind of argument, that you really build on it, right? That we see your take on things. We also get this slideshow on building your arguments. Um, the basic three pieces that I really like to hit on: claim, evidence, that reasoning. And I like to say reasoning is like explanation, right? A claim. There's a Mexican restaurant here in Evansville where I live, Los Bravos. Los Bravos has the best cheese dip in town. Okay, there's my claim. Okay, evidence. Now I got to provide you with evidence to back that up, right? Well, it's thick and creamy. The price is really good for how much you get. It's got a really good flavor and a little bit of spice, and not too much, but it, obviously not just cheese, but it's got spice in it. Okay, now reasoning. This is where I explain why those evidence prove my point. For instance, it's thick and creamy. So when you put your chip in it, the cheese sticks to the chip. Now, it's not too thick where you jam it in there and it breaks, right? And it's not too watery where you dunk the chip and no cheese sticks to it, right? It's thick and creamy. You put it in, it sticks to the chip, not breaking it, whatever. Reasoning, rationale, explanation. I walk my reader through that so that they see the evidence is not just rational and believable, but it supports my position. Then we get to the there's some additional information here that gives you some explanation about that. It also walks you through some different types of claims that you might make and how each of those kind of shapes your direction and your approach. Then we get to the online discussion board for this week. Again, we want to post our initial post midweek, Wednesday, Thursday or so, and then we want to reply to at least two other people. We want to apply to at least two other people by the Sunday night. Okay. It is always best that we are doing our initial post early so people have lots of posts to choose from. We are engaging with the discussion board on multiple days. That means you post on one day, you get on there and you post responses on a couple other days, and that you're doing more than just the required two. If you want the full points, if you want to have a shot at the full points, those are some of the things you need to do. Your initial post, what you're going to do is you're going to construct a working thesis statement to your argument, to the question that you've developed, right? This, and it says in here that you may keep it or you may modify it, and that's fine. I would really suggest that you are really working toward that thesis statement for your version of your paper. The more you change it, the kind of farther back you get. But take that thesis statement, pitch it, and then construct at least 4 different claims to that. Okay, and then those are those claims that were in that slideshow and that are in the text. Defining a classification, cause and effect, value, solution, and policy, right? And so this is where you build your argument based on those classifications or those different types of claims. Then you're going to respond to other people, or you're going to respond to one of yours. I'm sorry. How would you back that up? How would you support that? So you're going to have like these thesis statements, and then how would you define one? Okay. When you get to the responses, you're going to go to at least 2 of your responses. Again, if you want to chance it that the full value, the full points, you have to do more than the 2. And then how would you respond to that? And we have some suggestions on how you might respond to that. One of the biggest dangers in this discussion board, and we really have been doing very well on this so far, is that we're not engaging with the person, we're not engaging with the topic, we're engaging with the post, right? And so what that means is that we're not getting into a situation where you're, having a heated debate about the topic or about what was posted, right? We really want to focus on what was presented. That was a great claim of definition. I really see how you built it up by defining what it is, and how it operates and what class it's in, right? Really look at the what the post was and how that worked. You can add to that conversation, you can add to that topic, you can add your take on it. I don't see anything wrong with that. But what we want to avoid is a situation where you're like, hey, you're wrong because, right? We talked about that responding right at the very beginning. Like I see what you say, and this is what I say, right? But we're not getting into a debate about the topics. So definitely keep that in mind. We want to extend the conversation, we want to expand the conversation, but we don't want to get into a debate. And then finally, we get to where you will turn in your half draft. Again, the expectation is 600 to 700 words. I would love to see more. That sets you up for more feedback, and it makes your week 8 a little bit easier. But the expectation is just the half. Okay, so if you go beyond that, that's great. And then you're also going to take a copy of that draft and you're going to post it in the half draft project 3 for peer response. So just like what we did last time, you're going to submit one copy for feedback and you're going to submit one copy on the discussion board for student feedback, right? Okay, so again, here we are. We are getting close to the end. I definitely want to kind of encourage you to keep up a full head of steam. You guys have been doing great so far. You've been really keeping up with things, and you've really been moving forward. I am super impressed in all the great things that you're doing. Keep that up. I know we're getting to the end. I know that the weather might be changing a little bit. It might be a little different outside. It might be easy to distract or whatever, right? Keep your focus. Let's keep driving on what we've got going on. If you have any questions at all, please make sure you're reaching out to me. Make sure that you let me know what you need. Email is the best approach, but if you need to call or text me, that is also acceptable. But please don't suffer in silence. Keep up the work, guys.